Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eyes so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cass Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than we usually do. Usually we take a look at pro dances. Today we're going to look at more of a pro-am, and we're going to look at a few different ones. And we're going to talk about some ways that you can work with your partner. And it's not just for this type of setting where it's pro-am. This can be for like a social dance situation. This is really going to be for a lot of social dance situations. That's going to be the time where we most frequently dance with people that aren't our same skill level. And this can also be for when you're doing comps as well, when it's not necessarily like a skill level difference, but maybe somebody that you're just not as familiar with or you've not danced with before.
And in general, I like to think of how you can influence the partnership in a positive way. Either you are a higher level than your partner, or just in a particular circumstance, you're wanting to influence the partnership. There are kind of three tiers to it. The base tier is just you're fixing mistakes, and it's not necessarily impacting your partner at all. The next tier above that is influence. And this is often where, for example, higher level follows fall into when they're dancing with a leader that is of lower skill level than them. It really is just that it's influence. You can do things that if your partner's skill level is at a certain level, they will be able to adjust. And then the tier above that is just being able to physically move your partner, which is where leading falls into. So higher level leaders have, just by nature of the role they are dancing in, have more control over their follows' bodies through the connection just as it's baked in. And then if you have additional skill set on top of that, you are not just influencing your partner, you're physically making them move differently.
I also want to say that I won't necessarily be talking about it as much today just because we don't really have an example of it. But there are certain situations where, as a follow, you can kind of take on a leading role to move your partner. And like I said, we don't really have a great example of that today. We're going to be talking about some other things, but that is a thing that you can do. And in that situation, like, it is really good to know as a follow, like, either some leader concepts, basics, that type of thing, so that you're aware of, how you can communicate differently to your partner. So I just wanted to add on to that because you were mentioning about moving your
Yeah.
partner. As a
Yeah.
follow, you can, not going to be very common, but there are moments where it might be appropriate. And if you have some leader knowledge, it's going to be helpful in that situation to
Yeah.
know how to, direct where they're going and how to give good connection and how to not just shove people.
Right.
Yeah.
And the distinction being like in the follower's role, if you were to do that 100% of a dance, you're not a follower anymore. And that's where the area becomes gray.
Yeah.
So like yes, as a follower you have that power, but if you're exercising it all of the time, you're not following anymore, which is why it is easier as a leader to bring up a lower level follow than it is as a follow to bring up a lower level lead. So today we're going to be looking at a few different pro-am spotlight dances from Budafest, I believe January of this year. We're going to be looking at Sean, Bryn, and Maria, and how they are dancing with their partners. And really excited to talk about this today. There will be chapters for each video. So if you're a leader and you just want to go to the Sean part, feel free to skip ahead. Although I wouldn't recommend it because there's gold on the other side too. All right. To the screen share.
This is, to me, I don't know this lead at all, but I believe it's a higher-ish level lead. So Maria isn't going to have to do as much in terms of just like fixing anything in this particular dance, but she is very intentional about a few things. Like, the first few things I want to talk about is she is not trying to hit everything. She is really trying to be intentional with the styling that she's doing. She's not constantly trying to do something, which, you know, can be something that is fun to play with sometimes. But in the situation, um, she is not doing that as much. And she is going for these little small things, like this little foot in the middle of what she's moving through, right? So it's not really disrupting anything. She's just kind of adding a little bit onto it, right? Because she's already weighted onto that right foot. And so she just adds a little extra kick with the left. So doesn't change anything. She's just literally adding a little bit of extra flair to it. And then with this right here, she just does a little hair styling, hairography, whatever you want to call it. Um, and she does it while she's waiting on him to finish what he's doing, and she does it at a point in music that is appropriate for her to acknowledge something. And so then the other things that she is doing, so actually this is the next thing that I want to talk about. Um, if you are not familiar with a partner, if you know that your partner is newer, anything like that, if you know your partner isn't as familiar with like weight supported movements, um, great idea is to not just give them all of your weight. So the way that she does this here is she kind of just keeps herself, like, she doesn't stop at any particular moment. She kind of keeps flowing until she kind of runs into him. And then she does give him some weight, but not a lot of weight. The reason being is because she has such a wide base with her feet. And so she is holding most of her own weight still. And in a situation where you're just not as familiar with your partner, or, like I said, they're newer to the dance, i- it's going to be better for both of you to not just go right into any kind of weight supported movement. Even if they are leading it, a lot of times weight supported movements aren't necessarily trained as much or taught as much. So, they might have an idea of how to do it, but might not be able to.
Yeah, and then people practice with like the same few partners for that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So then when
Mhm.
they're in a situation with the partner they're less familiar with, it's not going to be perfected.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's one of the things the champions have above us, right? That's one of the reasons why they can do sometimes bananas things is
Yeah.
because they're really, really familiar with each other. Obviously, it's not always perfect because they're human too, but like they have experience doing a lot of those movements with each other because they see each other
Mhm.
almost every weekend,
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are able to take in the information just by where they're at in the dance, and also by what they know their partners prefer doing, or uh what they frequently do. So it's different in that sense, where they can, as a follow, you can really trust your lead and kind of go into whatever, and you can play with things like in that situation. That's fine. In this situation, you don't want to not trust your partner and not go into a dip at all. But, if you are not as familiar, it's a good idea to not just give all of your weight out of nowhere. Um, Even if they are leading you into something, it's much better to hold more of your own weight and still give them something. They need something to work with, obviously, which is why what she does is great, because she is still giving him weight, but she has one of her feet right under where she is. Right. So she has one foot to one side, her head's going to the other side. She has one foot right in the middle to kind of balance things out. So she's giving weight with the head and the arm, but not giving too much.
And that free arm is
Does
also
get into a
such a
really nice.
point of interest. Like it's drawing our eye, and like unless you're looking at her feet, you wouldn't necessarily see it because of that arm styling.
And he does get into a nice position for it. But again, you know, don't make it hard for either of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then this to me is a great example of just like really paying attention to your partner, because he doesn't let go of her back, and she initially is kind of up, and she is, I'm assuming, waiting for him to put her into some kind of send out of some sort. And that doesn't happen. He keeps holding onto her back. And so she's like, oh, we're wanting to do a ride because we're continuing in a circle. So she's like, okay, ride, let's do that. And that's a great example of her just like really paying attention to her partner and like what they're doing in terms of connecting with her and what they're doing in terms of where they're moving themselves. Yeah, and the way she goes about it is more of a gradual giving weight as well, because she initially kind of starts with uh the left foot dragging behind her, and then she goes into a more position where her hips get really sat back, where she brings the foot forward. So she's not just giving him all of her weight right away. She's easing into it. And that's just a great thing to do in general, to kind of test the connection, because you're not always going to be in the exact right spot for a ride, even if you might be in a decent position and kind of going through a movement that would be appropriate for a ride. It's not always going to be the correct positioning right away. So just not going into it right away in general is very helpful. Not just in a situation where you're less familiar with your partner or your partner is newer to the dance. So one other really good thing that you can do is really communicate things with your body angles, shaping. So here you can see that Maria is really over rotating in order to style something. And that in general, because she's been really clear about just keeping to more basic anchors and stuff, she's very clear about like, I'm not ready to go just yet. Right. When you turn your body away or you're at a unusual angle or position that you're not typically at to anchor. And so she uses it really well. And she just plays around with it. And then she kind of goes with the flow with how he's wanting to kind of move her.
And then since we talked about it so recently, in addition to the over rotation, she's also using pitch. So she ends up
Yeah.
placing this foot in between them and then using it to be able to press into the floor and really shift her weight even more away from him
Mhm.
to be able to delay her traveling towards him.
Bottom line, she does a really great job of creating an unusual positioning, getting him to pay more attention to her. And then she is not just going through with whatever she wants to do without paying attention to him. She's doing what she wants to do, but also still paying attention to what he's doing so that she is not being caught off guard when he is still kind of bringing her forward. She's able to slowly move into that out of the different position she's in. So.
Here's a good example of the difference between influence and like moving a person. Because what Maria does here is she wants to extend an anchor and just like hang out there. And he's high enough level that he aborts what he
Mhm.
was doing. But if he were a novice or a newcomer, he might not be able to abort his movement. The lower level leader would get the message, but not be able to apply it
Mhm.
necessarily. And they might like ricochet back at the follow. And so this is an example of why there's a distinction between that tier two and that tier three. Whereas when it's the other way, there are things that you can do as a leader that have more direct physical control over your follow to make timing changes like that. And that's why it's easier as a leader than it is to follow. Now we're looking at Sean. And Sean is such a gentleman in this dance. Like the way he is attending to and taking care of her to help her be as successful as possible is,
Mhm.
and we want to highlight the the tips and tricks, some of like the things that he is doing to make that happen. So the first thing I want to highlight is the way in which he encourages her to anchor for the first time here from the starter step. And what he's doing is instead of just extending his arm while countering in the opposite direction, for example, he is actually following through with his body as well. So he's really coming towards her to encourage her to keep anchoring back away from him. And one of the things that I noticed watching this is there's a delay between his hand moving and her back going into his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could, so pay attention over here, right there. It's like so subtle to see, but suddenly she speeds up to go back to match his hand. And when you're a leader who has a follow that's not necessarily like magnet to your hand, you can use not just your body moving through space to encourage them to keep the space between your chests the same, but you can actually be using the open handhold as well to help facilitate that.
Yeah.
Another thing that we see Sean doing a lot in this dance is fine tuning the timing of her anchor into her one ever so slightly so it's delayed more correctly. Because as a follow, if we do a 5 and a 6 and a 1, the follow on the 6 and should still be intentioning away. And even sometimes into the count 1, the intention is still away and then it accelerates afterwards. Backed up, we're going to pay attention to the handhold. So this is a 5 and 6. So if we notice the handhold is about here, you can see that Sean is extending his arm so the hand can stay in about the same place, which is encouraging her to stay. He's delaying at what point in time the hand starts moving down the slot to lead.
Yeah.
To encourage her timing to be correct. And when he's dancing with a peer, he doesn't have to do that. The hand goes with him through his 6 and a 1, and the follow is resisting that through their connection, increasing the tension. So that way it creates a rubber band effect.
And I want to add, that's not to say that she's doing anything wrong. Just generally, when we are initially teaching anchors and such, we don't teach the techniques that help us really hang back as much. That tends to be a later down the line thing. So a lot of times it is helpful to be able to encourage a partner to hang back if they aren't already using that technique.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't seen our pitch video, I will link it above because that's where we go into detail of like the mechanics of how you're able to hang back in both roles. He's making this like less than a half a count adjustment
Mhm.
in when his hand starts coming forward. He leaves it behind just like a hair longer than he would with a higher level follow to help her have that beautiful rubber band effect. And it's just taking her dancing just up a notch. And it's really lovely. So this time we have a dip where the leader is the higher level dancer. And you can see he is placing both of his hands squarely on her shoulder blades to be able to support her however much she ends up giving.
Yep.
Because in that level difference where the leader is higher level, you don't know how practiced a follow is at following dips or like what kind of weight they're going to give because sometimes the weight will be off balance in a weird way. So he is planting a wide stance, getting both hands on her back in order to support her as much as he possibly can. And it ends
Mhm.
up being nice and stable and secure and she can just enjoy herself and have some lovely free leg going on.
And that's not necessarily something that has to only be for a dancer that you're not as familiar with or that's, not as practiced with dips. That
Mhm.
can just be with anyone just to, you know, make the dip feel safer in general.
Yeah. That's what I do when I'm leading most of the time
Yeah.
because my knees are bad.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that like I have to accommodate the weaker parts of my body so I can still be as sturdy for my partner as possible.
Yeah. Exactly. So There's plenty of different reasons that you can use a technique like this.
Here's just another example of that anchor I was talking about, where he leaves the hand behind just a split second longer to really give that beautiful rubber band effect. He's doing this basically on all of the anchors, but I wanted to highlight at least another one.
Yeah.
So,
I also want to add to that that if you watch what he's doing with his own body, not just his arm, he's also not like what he's doing in order to lead through his 6 and 1 is different than it generally looks. He's more upright. He's not pitching and using the floor as much because he doesn't need to use a lot of power in this
right,
situation.
right. And that's an important note for tall leaders in general,
Mhm.
because you don't have to pitch your body as much in order to have power and strength with the average sized follow. If he were over here, he would overpower her really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where this becomes context for.
Yeah. Yep.
This is the first of a couple of times in this dance where he's using the handhold and like setting it at a certain height
Mhm.
and then leaving it there and like reducing as many variables as possible. So
Yeah.
it's really clear what he's doing. And it allowed him to be able to pass her with
Mhm.
just a one handhold,
Yeah.
which like it's a lot easier if you have both hands to like get a follow to stay in place and move past them. So this is like the advanced version.
Also want to give her a little compliment here because she doesn't like overreact to anything. She's just kind of
Mhm.
waiting to see what's going on and what he's going to lead her into next.
Yeah, she's an absolutely lovely follow.
Mhm. And just like in general, I want to add like, we don't generally talk about dancers on here that aren't professionals just because we don't feel like that would be fair to them. Um, And so we're in general trying to keep it pretty neutral, but we also want to give some positives as well from here,
Yeah.
time to time.
Right here, Sean is able to use the rotation of the handhold to actually open up her body
Mhm.
some because she has been tending to stay more square when left to her own devices. And this is him just using his power as a leader to help encourage her to open up to the audience,
Mhm.
which is a really, I just thought it was really nice.
Yeah. And it's nice on her end that she has the technique to be able to keep her arm connected to the rest of her body. Because this is
Mhm.
a technique that has to have that happening in order to
Yeah.
use it.
And that's one of the things because, like, even like I know I have had to turn off that ability to lead me that way because some leaders don't have the skill to not be dangerous when doing that, or they do it all the time. And so it kind of means nothing. So you have to
Yeah.
kind of turn it off. Her fluidity in following this was really lovely.
And also want to add that he's encouraging her to open up because generally speaking, when we're first learning this dance, we aren't learning as follows to be more open to the audience because we're not performing initially. That's not what we're
Mhm.
learning. Um, so this is a situation where that's appropriate. Um, and not because of her technique or anything. It's just because of when we're first learning, we learn more to face our partners.
Mhm.
So he's just helping her because she does have nice connection. So
Yeah.
he's
And
being
it's also serving a purpose because over rotating her like this is allowing this prep into this outside turn
yeah.
to be more gentle. He would have had to have been a little bit more aggressive, isn't the right word, but the handhold would have had to move through space more.
Gonna have to
Right,
accelerate
this
him.
certain term, yeah. But by over rotating her first, it made the follow through be more gentle and flow better.
Yeah. Which is important, just because you never know how much a partner can really handle as far as like acceleration, like holding their own.
Hmm.
And thus far, he hasn't like really tried to play around with that at all because this is not the situation for that.
Hmm.
So he's just trying to keep it easy, and not trying to throw too much at her.
And it looks like he was wanting to follow through with that acceleration,
Mhm.
But she basically sent the energy down into the ground, and he adjusted at the drop of a hat in
Yeah.
order to lead based on what she followed, as
Mhm.
opposed to forcing through his original idea.
Yeah.
It's something I've said on the show a number of times. As a leader, you lead pattern A, but the follow might do pattern A2, or then you no, we're going to do pattern C, and then you have to react and lead from what they did, not from what you wanted to happen, in
Yeah.
order for it to A, be safer, and B, to like flow and create something cool together.
Mhm. And I also want to add to that that there's multiple reasons that you might lead pattern A and your follow might do pattern B or C. It's not necessarily just what the follow is doing. There's multiple reasons, so that's why you need to just be aware.
Yeah. Someone might have appeared behind you as a leader out of
Mhm.
nowhere, and you don't know, and they're
Yeah.
adjusting to protect you, for example.
Mhm.
Lots of
Yeah.
things going on.
Yeah. Or another thing would be like maybe you were intending to lead like a whip or something, but the angle that you're coming from, it ends up you end up leading not a like a whip, you end up leading something that you weren't necessarily intending to lead. So your follow just goes with whatever you actually led, not with what you were intending to lead, right? So there's
Yep.
plenty of reasons that that could happen, which is why we always need to be aware of our partners when we can. I also want to add, so she kind of starts doing a little bit more styling stuff right around here. And Sean picks up on that and he's doing a good job of not trying to lead a bunch of stuff. He's trying to wait and see what she's doing first.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like I was saying, she starts to add a little bit more of her voice into it right around here. And he's doing a very good job of like really paying attention to what she's doing because he sees that she's wanting to do something. So he clearly has his plan, but he's like ready to change it.
Here's another example of him like setting the handhold very extra low to make sure she physically cannot get further away.
He also does a great job of being like super clear. Like, let's walk together, right? He makes eye contact and he starts it before she gets into the end of what she's doing.
Mhm. And then I want to highlight something because this is, I feel like, something that gets lost in translation for these kinds of patterns. They're on different rails for this to work.
Yeah.
So he's on this rail, whereas she is starting on this one. And it's that offset that is allowing him to then use some compression in the handhold in addition to like where he put the handhold and that eye contact. He can actually offer compression
Yeah.
to lead her in a very particular direction.
Mhm.
If you, as a leader, get your follow onto the same rail as you and then try to move the partnership as a whole in one direction, like towards the audience, for example, it's actually going to end up being an unspooling effect on the follow, some sort of tethered effect, as opposed to both moving together as one piece.
Yeah.
So what he's doing is that as after this rotation is finishing, he's basically just leaving his handhold out over top of the rail in front of him because
Mhm.
that's how he's placing her, as opposed to bringing it to his side, to his left.
Mhm. So they're doing something that's not explicitly like a connection lead follow thing. So he's being very clear about not just grabbing her and leading her into something else. He's being very clear about, okay, I'm anchoring now. So
Mhm.
we're going to go into something else. We're done here.
So here's another example of him just using an open handhold to change what's going on in order to pass her. I think we all know from the beginning, like if you're a leader dancing with a follow who has less skill than you to any degree, having them in closed position or both hands is going to make everything a lot easier. And so those are still valid options, regardless of what level you get to as a leader. But there are more tools in the toolbox. that you can use. We spoke to this a little bit earlier, but he road mapped the whole dance
Mhm.
in a way to allow her to feel safe and comfortable and also to like soothe her nerves. Cause I bet that was nerve wracking and anxiety inducing. Oh my God, I'm dancing with Sean McKeever. It's felt like,
Yeah.
um, and it like, it allowed her, to become more and more confident as the song progressed. And so that's another level of being an amazing leader is the social aspect of like making your partner feel comfortable. And that's another thing as a follow-up you can do for your leader. But again, you can't also all the time physically manipulate 100%
Mhm.
of the things going on. Otherwise, you're not following. Next up, Bryn.
I believe that this is a novice or newcomer
Right.
lead that she's dancing with. So I want to talk about a few more basic things than we looked at with Maria. Um, so just baseline, easiest thing that you can do is use the beat to style anything and to move on. Like don't try and play around too much with anything super complicated. Um, really stick to the things that are easy for you to both hear in the music. Um, and that's beat, or if there's like a predictable lyric that you've already heard multiple times in the song or something to that effect. Uh, use those types of things to play around with instead of like, ooh, I hear this one little small rhythm in the background of this music that I want to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Go with the very recognizable things. Um, and then one thing that Bryn is really great at doing with this is being super clear about her anchors, and making sure she's getting to the end of her slot
Mm-hmm.
quickly and being very clear about it.
Yeah. And she's also pitching less with this
Mhm.
leader. So that way she's not overpowering her leader.
Same thing we were just talking about with Sean, different
Yeah.
different position.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that neither of them are pitching at all. They are. It's just very minimal.
Hmm.
And again, we can see with Bren, like we were seeing with Maria, where she's styling in what's already being led and not trying to confuse her partner at all.
Hmm.
Like this here, I love this. She does a little hand
Little
styling,
hands.
and it goes great with the music, and it does not mess with her partner at all. She's still going exactly with what her partner is leading her into.
Hmm.
Now, here's a great example to me of like not rushing anything, right? As follows, especially when we're on a stage of some sort, we're performing some way, we have a tendency to like rush into like needing to fill time and space with some kind of something, right? And so she does the opposite here, and she just kind of waits. She's like being led through this. Her lead isn't moving her into anything else just yet. So she's not trying to fix the problem right away. Not that there's a problem, but she's not trying to adjust right away and be like, oh, I'll figure it out for us. She's like, I will give you a minute to figure out what you would like me to do next. And then she goes with it. But she doesn't just rush out of what's going on. She kind of waits to see, like, what are you going to lead me into next? And how can I help you get us out of this?
Hmm.
Especially because, like, uh, this is kind of a situation that is not a super common positioning to be in where a follow has their back to your lead. And so this is a more complex situation that new dancers aren't necessarily going to be equipped to get out of very easily, right?
Hmm.
So they're going to go back to what they know. And Brent does a great job of being like, I'll wait. Do you have something that you would like me to do out of this? And then when it's just like a regular kind of, I'm going to bring you forward, she's like, okay, I will rotate out of this and come forward.
It's kind of a good rule of thumb that like once you've entered an area of like discomfort emotionally,
Hmm. Yeah.
stay at least one beat longer
Yeah.
then your nerves are trying to pull you out of it from.
Mhm.
Often, like even longer would be better.
Yeah.
You can basically titrate up your tolerance for emotional discomfort in those kind of moments. Be like, start
Yep.
out with just like 1 beat longer
Yep.
before you bail.
And even in these situations where there's a spotlight or, it's some type of comp where people are watching, like, don't be afraid to just wait.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to fill every single second with something. Like, it's okay to just wait a second, right? If you personal opinion, but I would rather a follow wait and see what's going on rather than trying to fill space with something, and then that makes more miscommunication happen between the partners.
Hmm.
So,
I agree.
taking the variables out of the situation to me is much more uh, helpful to a partnership. And I would also like to add, so in terms of the music, like timing that she ends up coming forward um is slightly off for that, where she's rotating back towards her. It's slightly off. And so they both kind of fix it by just doing a little bit of a step and then back instead of doing like a full sugar push type, right? It's just
Hmm.
changing the footwork slightly in order to fix the timing. And I wanted to include that. I said earlier that we wouldn't really be talking about like fixing anything, and this isn't just Bryn fixing it, like it's both of them kind
Hmm.
of like hearing it and being like, "Oh, that's kind of weird," and they both kind of fix it together because you can see her leads kind of compressing into her as well.
Yeah,
So,
they both did a lovely job of
yeah,
resetting
yeah,
what their timing was.
exactly. But like I was saying, I wanted to point that out because they are correcting a timing thing, but it's a partnership timing thing. It's not like Bryn correcting it for them.
Yeah.
So another thing that you can do is like be very aware of being able to offer hands and connection points. So here we're doing this really fun little hand thing, right? And then the lead's like, "Are we stopping? Okay, I think we're stopping now." And Bryn just keeps her hands there. Like she's not trying to change anything. She's
Mhm.
just leaving it right there until she's like, "Okay, I see what we're doing now." And that's super important, right? If she would have taken her hand away, it would have been way harder to find a point to get out of that,
Mhm.
right? Because they are using that the hand that wasn't as connected, that kind of took a little bit longer to reconnect, they're using that as the compression point more so than the one that's up over the head. Right. And so Bryn's leaving her hand there just because she's like, I think this is going to be the best way for us to get out of this.
Mhm.
Mhm. And I love the playfulness with what she's doing. She's adding more attitude into it than like a bunch of styling purposes or styling, situations. She's not doing a ton of um like fancy footwork. She's trying to keep the footwork pretty basic, and she's doing a little bit more like attitude for performance and some little fun hand things, right? And there would be nothing wrong with doing that in like a social setting either. Like that doesn't have to just be for a performance, right?
Mhm. You want to talk about how Bryn reacts to the hand on her back for a hot second? It looks to me like Bryn is like, "Oh, is something about to change?" But she doesn't change something right away. She
Mhm.
just waits again.
So the way that she's being caught there, she's not sure what is going to happen because where she's being caught is quite low, and she's also not necessarily catching her and directing her in any particular way. So she's kind of waiting, right? So that's like we were talking again. She's not trying to rush it or trying to figure out what's going on. She's just kind of hanging out in what's happening and then just letting things flow naturally, right? Because the way that she is rotating. She probably is being stopped a little too early if she is just stopping when the hand is touching her. So she's letting herself kind of finish a little bit of rotation, but then she's not like forcing anything else. She's just staying in this position and just kind of backing away.
And the way she's continuing to spot her leader through this,
Mm-hmm.
really keep that visual focus as well.
Because to me, this is more of like, could be going into some type of like telemarky thing, right?
Mhm.
But she doesn't just assume, she just kind of is really paying attention to her lead to see, are you actually moving in the direction that you should be to lead, whatever I think you maybe are trying to lead, like telemark or something like that. And when
Mhm.
she's not, she's just moving backwards because she's already moving backwards. She just keeps it moving until they reconnect with that right hand.
Mhm.
And in that situation, she actually, because she's been super clear about her anchors this whole time, she's just doing like basic triples. She's not doing a lot of fancy footwork at the end of her slot. And in this, she's just like ready to react to whatever's coming next because she's not sure what her leader is wanting. So she's just ready to react. So she doesn't even do her like anchor that she's been very clear about. She's just like, okay, I'm ready. What are you wanting to do? Oh, we're going forward? Great.
Mhm.
She doesn't try to resist or anything.
And then I just noticed while you were talking, the way she snakes through this underarm turn,
Mm-hmm.
there isn't there's just not quite enough room for her to go through it comfortably, but she's adjusting to that in a way that's dynamic as opposed to purely functional, aka taking note to self.
Yeah, kind of make it into more of a styling situation rather than a being cut off.
Mhm.
And the other thing I want to add is on these like sugar push type compression redirections. She's not committing a ton of weight forward either. She's actually, instead of moving forward and letting the lead really redirect all of her weight, she's putting her foot out to check in front of her to help redirect herself. Because in general, when you go into the like a sugar push type footwork, your feet should either end up next to each other or just slightly offset. But she's doing quite a bit of slowing herself before she even gets into that three and where she's redirecting. She's really slowing herself, reaching out in front with the foot and then redirecting herself. Not entirely, but she's helping her lead do that rather than forcing her lead to really match a heavy connection and redirect her all by themselves. And that's a good way to do it because you're still giving some kind of compression. It's not like you're just giving nothing,
Mhm.
but then you're not relying entirely on your lead to redirect you. It just ends up being a lighter connection. Another thing I want to point out for this specifically is that when she's going into this compression, she's actually keeping her arms a little bit more stiff than usual, just because there needs to be a little bit more frame to help with the redirect. And it's partially because her hands are lower, and partially because she's being led where it's like quite a ways in front of her as well. So she's keeping her arms a little bit more stiff in order to help with the connection and um the redirect. Because you can see as soon as she gets back, her arms are then bending again. And she generally speaking keeps her arms pretty relaxed. Um, so we're kind of only seeing it in that moment where she's kind of her hands are just getting further away from her, and she needs some kind of connection to redirect. So, and I love there that she was really paying attention to her lead, trying to add some styling in, and she's like, "I'll match you on that."
Mhm.
Do it together. And she's still waiting until she's being let out of it, and she's not trying to rush herself out because her arms are in like a comfortable position. They're not uncomfortable. Um, and so she's not concerned about getting out of this locked position. That's fun. I thought her lead did a great job.
Yeah, all of these, the amateurs did absolutely beautiful jobs in
Yeah,
each of these dances,
yeah,
and we hope you had as much fun as it looked like you were having.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we just really wanted to highlight how the pros in this situation really were able to enhance the solid dancing that they were already getting from their
Mhm.
partners. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. If you liked this kind of episode, and there's like a particular program, if there's a program of yours that you would like us to look at, like another technique that sometimes leaders can use is actually using more energy to encourage a follow to hang back, because there's just some fascinating physics things that you can do in
Exactly.
this dance
Yeah.
to help balance out the partnership. And
These are just like
we
basic
scratched the
things.
surface today.
Yeah. And like I was saying, like these are the things that you're gonna come across like mainly in social dancing situations, right? Because that's when we're gonna most likely not be partnered up with somebody that is our same level or that we're super familiar with, right? Those are the
Mhm.
situations that we're gonna find these types of things useful to put into play.
Yeah, and also like with floorcraft. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, that might actually be a fun video. We should find like a late night social dance video for some pros on a crowded floor, and then we
Hmm.
can highlight the floorcraft.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun episode. Again, thank you all for joining us. And if you have either a program or just one of your own videos and you want some feedback, and you are willing to have it live on the internet,
Yep.
let us know. Otherwise, we will be back at some juncture in the future, as we always return.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Hey.